The New Year's celebration had always been one of our favorite traditions. For 15 years, my wife Emily and I would dress up, sip champagne, and toast to another year of love and partnership. This year was no different, or so I thought. The countdown ended, and the room erupted in cheers. Fireworks lit up the winter sky as we clinked our glasses, but something in Emily's eyes seemed distant, clouded. After the guests had left and the house was eerily quiet, she approached me, her hands trembling, her face pale. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice a whisper. The words tumbled out like broken glass. She had cheated. She didn't sugarcoat it, didn't dress it up. It was a single night, she claimed, with a mutual friend, on her best friend's birthday, no less. The air seemed to leave the room, suffocating me with its absence. My mind raced, trying to piece together the hows and whys. Her face was wet with tears, but I couldn't summon any for myself. Not yet. And then, as if guided by some cruel irony, I found myself saying, "I cheated too." It wasn't planned or vindictive, just a moment of weakness during a business trip. It wasn't an affair, I assured her, it was a lapse. The silence that followed felt like a vacuum, pulling everything we had built into its void. For hours, we spoke, or rather, stumbled, through the wreckage of our confessions. Divorce seemed inevitable, but Emily begged for another chance, for us to start over. She said we owed it to the years, to the love that once bound us together. Against all odds, I agreed. The thought of rebuilding felt daunting, but I told myself it was worth trying, for her, for us. What I didn't know then was how the seeds of our ruin had already taken root. The decision to rebuild wasn't easy, but we threw ourselves into it like survivors clinging to a life raft. We went to couples therapy, spent long nights talking over wine, and rediscovered parts of each other we had taken for granted. At first, it was awkward, like rehearsing a play we'd forgotten the lines to. But over time, the routines of married life began to feel natural again. Emily cooked dinner more often, her laughter finding its way back into the silence that had once suffocated our home. I took time off work to surprise her with weekend trips, places we'd always talked about visiting but never had. It felt like progress, imperfect but genuine. Still, there were moments when doubt crept in like an uninvited guest. I'd catch her staring into the distance, her lips moving as if rehearsing words she couldn't say aloud. And when I lay awake at night, I'd wonder if my own guilt made me blind to signs I should be seeing. But whenever those thoughts surfaced, I'd bury them under the weight of our shared commitment. We were trying, and that had to count for something. A year passed, and we decided to mark our fresh start with a joint vacation. It was Emily's idea, a beach resort with white sand and endless cocktails. "We need this," she said, her eyes glimmering with hope. "Just you and me, away from everything." She wasn't wrong. Life had become a grind of rebuilding and proving ourselves to each other, and the promise of sunlit mornings and moonlit dances felt like an escape we both desperately needed. The first few days were magical. We swam in the warm ocean, held hands on sunset walks, and drank cocktails that tasted like liquid joy. For the first time in what felt like forever, I caught glimpses of the woman I had fallen in love with, a woman who could make the world disappear with a single smile. Then, on the third evening, everything changed. It started innocently enough. Emily had spotted someone at the bar, a man she recognized from college. "Oh my God, it's Ryan," she said, her excitement bubbling over. "We used to study together. I haven't seen him in years." Ryan joined us for a drink, and I played the role of polite husband, listening as they reminisced. He was charming in that casually confident way that put people at ease. I didn't think much of it. After all, we were on a vacation to forget about mistrust, not nurture it. But as the hours passed and the drinks flowed, I noticed the way Emily's laugh lingered a bit too long, her gaze locked on his a moment too often. She was animated in a way I hadn't seen in months. Something inside me stirred, an unease I couldn't quite name. When I suggested we call it a night, Emily insisted on staying for just one more drink. I nodded, kissed her cheek, and left her there with Ryan, telling myself I was being paranoid. We were past this. We had to be. Back in our room, I tried to sleep, but my mind refused to rest. I lay in the dark, counting the minutes, until they stretched into hours. And when she finally came back, well past midnight, her cheeks were flushed, her smile wide. "Sorry I'm late," she said, kicking off her sandals. "We just got caught up talking about old times." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But as she climbed into bed and turned away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, something I couldn't yet see but would soon come to know. The morning after her late return, Emily was all smiles. She brought me coffee in bed, kissed my cheek, and suggested we spend the day exploring the local markets. I forced a smile and agreed, though my thoughts kept drifting back to the night before. She was radiant, but there was an edge to her enthusiasm, like she was trying too hard to smooth over something jagged. At the markets, we wandered through stalls of handmade jewelry and colorful fabrics, her laughter echoing above the hum of vendors and tourists. I tried to lose myself in the moment, to let her carefree energy sweep me away. But every time I caught her checking her phone, a knot tightened in my chest. She wasn't the type to be glued to her screen, especially on vacation. By evening, my unease had grown into a gnawing suspicion I couldn't ignore. She suggested we hit the resort's beach bar for drinks, but I feigned exhaustion and told her to go ahead without me. "You've been so happy this trip," I said, forcing warmth into my voice. "Go enjoy yourself. I'll just relax here." She hesitated for a moment, then kissed me on the forehead. "I won't be long," she said, slipping into a breezy dress and sandals. As the door closed behind her, the silence in the room felt oppressive. I sat on the bed for what felt like an eternity, staring at the empty space she left behind. My chest felt heavy, my breath shallow. Finally, I grabbed my phone and left the room, my heart pounding with a mixture of dread and resolve. The beach bar was alive with music and laughter, the warm glow of string lights casting a golden hue on the crowd. I stayed in the shadows, scanning the faces for hers. It didn't take long to spot her. She was at the far end of the bar, sitting close to Ryan. Too close. I watched as he leaned in, his hand brushing hers as he spoke. Her smile was radiant, her body language open. My stomach twisted as she threw her head back in laughter, the kind of laugh that felt too intimate, too free. It wasn't just the closeness or the way they looked at each other, it was the ease, the familiarity. The way she tilted her head when he spoke, the soft touches that could have been innocent but weren't. I clenched my fists, feeling a rush of heat rise to my face. Part of me wanted to march over there, to pull her away and demand answers. But I stayed rooted in place, the weight of betrayal pressing me down. When she finally returned to the room later that night, I pretended to be asleep. She slipped into bed without a word, her movements careful, almost guilty. For the next few days, I played the part of the oblivious husband while the distance between us grew. She was attentive, affectionate even, but I could see the cracks forming again. I started watching her more closely, noticing the way her demeanor shifted when she received a text or caught a glimpse of Ryan across the resort. Then, one night, she left for a quick drink with an old friend. She didn't come back until the early hours of the morning, the scent of whiskey and something unfamiliar clinging to her skin. And that's when I knew. I didn't need to see it or hear it confirmed. The truth was in the way she carried herself, the subtle shift in her energy. She was doing it again. This time, I wasn't going to wait to catch her red-handed. I had learned my lesson from the first betrayal. Quietly, methodically, I began to plan. I didn't need proof for myself, I had already seen enough. But proof was power, and power was what I would need to take control of the inevitable fallout. Emily's phone habits had shifted dramatically. She'd become guarded, keeping her phone face down on the table or slipping away to take calls she claimed were from work. I didn't press her. The best way to catch a lie is to let it grow. On our second-to-last night at the resort, she excused herself after dinner, saying she was heading to the spa for a late massage. "I'll be back in an hour," she promised, brushing my cheek with her hand. I nodded, careful to keep my expression neutral. "Take your time." "You deserve it," I said, my voice even. The moment the door closed behind her, I sprang into action. I'd already noticed how the resort's security cameras were positioned around the property, including a particularly well-placed one near the spa entrance. If she was going to meet Ryan, they wouldn't be clever enough to avoid being spotted. Using a staff member's uniform I had borrowed earlier under the pretense of a lost phone, I blended into the resort's late-night crowd. I made my way to the security office, a dingy room tucked away behind the main lobby. Inside, a weary security guard sat scrolling through his phone. Slipping him a folded $50 bill, I explained that my wife had lost her necklace and I was hoping to check the spa's footage. He barely glanced at me before nodding, pulling up the feed from the evening. Sure enough, there she was, striding toward the spa in her flowing sundress. But instead of heading inside, she veered off to a dimly lit pathway that led to the beach bungalows. My heart sank as the timestamp confirmed her lie. I thanked the guard and hurried back to our room. Grabbing my phone, I followed the same pathway she'd taken, keeping to the shadows. When I reached the bungalows, I moved silently, careful not to draw attention. The sound of muffled laughter reached my ears first, followed by the faint clink of glasses. As I crept closer, my worst fears solidified into an unbearable truth. Through the half-drawn curtains of one bungalow, I saw them, Emily and Ryan, tangled on the couch, their bodies close, their movements intimate. The room spun around me as rage boiled in my veins. For a moment, I debated storming in, confronting them in their stolen moment. But a calm, cold voice in the back of my mind held me back. No, not yet. This wasn't the time to explode. This was the time to calculate. I backed away, my breathing shallow, my fists clenched. Returning to the room, I began setting my plan in motion. If Emily thought I would be the same forgiving man I was after her first betrayal, she was gravely mistaken. This time, I would leave nothing for her to hold on to. No money, no security, no illusions of reconciliation. She wanted freedom, and I would give it to her, in the cruelest way possible. Back at the room, I started the process. Logging into our joint accounts, I quietly moved funds into a new account under my name. I changed the passwords to our shared services, reset her credit card limits, and ensured that the house title, long since paid off, was securely in my name alone. Lastly, I prepared an envelope, sliding in a single letter I had written earlier that week. Inside, I laid out every raw, unfiltered thought about her betrayal and its consequences. It wasn't just a condemnation, it was a statement of finality. There would be no second chances. When Emily returned just after midnight, I was already in bed, my back turned to her. She climbed in without a word, the scent of cheap wine and ocean breeze clinging to her skin. I didn't sleep that night, but for the first time in a long time, I felt clarity. Tomorrow, everything would fall apart. But it wouldn't be me left standing in the rubble. The morning came shrouded in an unnatural calm. Emily stirred beside me, her body shifting under the sheets. I remained still, staring at the ceiling, already rehearsing the words I wouldn't say. She got up, humming softly as she moved around the room, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath my calm exterior. She suggested we have breakfast at the resort's cafe, her voice light, as if nothing had changed. Sounds good, I replied, forcing a smile. Inside, I was already miles away, detached, calculating. After breakfast, she excused herself to grab something from the gift shop. I watched her leave, her sundress swaying as she walked. There was no guilt in her stride, no hesitation. She was either the world's best actress or had convinced herself that her lies were justified. I returned to the room and put the final pieces in place. On the nightstand, I left the envelope. On the outside, I wrote her name in bold, decisive letters. Inside, the letter I had crafted spared no detail, no mercy. When Emily returned, I was gone. The plane ride home felt surreal. I looked out the window at the endless expanse of clouds, my mind replaying the moments of the past few days. I didn't feel sadness anymore, only a cold, quiet satisfaction. By the time Emily realized what had happened, I was already sitting in my lawyer's office. The accounts were frozen, the locks on the house changed, and the joint credit cards cancelled. Everything was set in motion. I imagine she found the envelope after wandering the room in confusion, trying to piece together why her keycard didn't work at checkout or why her phone alerts suddenly lit up like fireworks with denial messages from the bank. I could see her reading the letter, the smile vanishing from her lips as the weight of her choices sank in. The letter. Emily. You destroyed us. Not with one act, but with a pattern of selfishness, of deceit. I gave you a second chance when you confessed the first time. I chose to believe in the possibility of redemption, of growth, of healing. But you didn't value it. You didn't value me. This marriage didn't end because of what Ryan represents, it ended because of who you are. You thought you could have it all, my loyalty, my trust, and your indulgence. You mistook my forgiveness for weakness. That was your mistake, and now, you'll have to live with it. I've taken steps to protect myself, as I should have done long ago. You'll find no safety net waiting for you. You wanted freedom. You've got it. But freedom without integrity is just emptiness. I loved you once, Emily, with everything I had. But that love died the moment you decided I wasn't enough. This is the last thing you'll hear from me. I'm done carrying the weight of your betrayal. Goodbye. I didn't need to see her reaction to feel closure. The letter was enough. A week later, I received an email from her. A desperate, rambling plea for another chance. She said she was sorry, that she was lost and had made a terrible mistake. She claimed she still loved me, that she was ready to do whatever it takes to fix things. I didn't respond. Somewhere along the line, I learned that the worst thing you can do to someone who took you for granted isn't to fight or rage, it's to leave them in silence, with nothing but their own choices to haunt them. Emily would survive, but she'd never have what we had again. That was her punishment. And for the first time in years, I felt free.